Good morning, good afternoon, Who Dat Nation. Brendan Boylan here with my guy Bob Rose, the dynamic duo of the Saints News Network, back with another pregame show. Bob, it was an interesting Saturday for the New Orleans Saints. I believe 6 different roster moves for the team. The injury bug has came back and bit New Orleans even harder than the first time it would appear. So let's try to catch everybody up. There's a lot going on. I'm going to try to spew it all out, but I'm sure I'm going to miss a couple. So that's why you're here too. Alvin Kamara is not going to be playing. He didn't practice this week with what is understood to be a knee sprain, a mild knee sprain. So out this week. Have to see what happens next week. It gives Mark Ingram the nod to start. Remember, he's only 20 yards away from Deuce McAllister's all-time rushing record. So we do expect that to be broken today, and I can't think of a better New Orleans Saint to pass that record than Mark Ingram. So we're excited for that. But New Orleans is banged up all over the place. Defensive side of the ball. Peyton Turner goes on IR. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who has a broken toe, and that was shown on his personal Twitter page. Have to give C.J. Gardner-Johnson some props. He was repping the local basketball team, repping the New City jerseys for the New Orleans Pelicans, but didn't crop out the bottom of his foot. You could definitely see there was a walking boot on, so I think he kind of gave it away early. But a broken toe for C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He's on IR as well. Bob, who else am I missing? We have Teron Armstead, who's going to be out this week as well. So, Bob, I gave a little rundown of it, but I know there's much more. Let's start with this. How are you? Happy Sunday. There's a lot going on in the New Orleans Saints world, though.
Happy Sunday to you, Brendan. Happy Sunday to all of Who Dat Nation that's tuning in to watch us right now. And we certainly appreciate the support. I hope all you guys are staying healthier than what our New Orleans Saints are, because like Brendan pointed out, they are banged up. Teron Armstead, as you mentioned, Brendan, he'll be out this game. James Hurst, who has been playing in Andrews Keate's left guard spot, Hurst is going to move over to left tackle, where he has played pretty well, when he's replaced Armstead in the past. Taking the left guard spot will be Calvin Throckmorton, who played, I thought, extremely well, when he started the first 4 or 5 games at the right guard position. The Saints still should be pretty good along the offensive line, but they can't afford any more nicks and bruises, man. That depth has saved them all year, but it's pretty much whittled down to nothing. Then, as you said, Mark Ingram is going to get the brunt of the rushing load in place of Alvin Kamara. We do expect Taysom Hill to see a lot more snaps than what he has the last 2 weeks. He'll come in for Trevor Siemian on some quarterback packages, I'm sure. But Taysom Hill, Mark Ingram, and to a lesser extent Ty Montgomery are going to take care of the rushing load. The Saints need a good game out of Mark Ingram today to even have a shot against a very physical but also banged up Tennessee defense. Tennessee is they have their own injury concern. You mentioned Julio Jones is going to be out for the Titans today, but on the defensive side, they're going to be without Tier Tart, their nose tackle, and without both their inside linebackers and leading tacklers, David Long and Rashawn Evans. Now, Tennessee has some depth here at linebacker. Jayon Brown and a very promising rookie, Monty Rice, is going to take those spots. So it'll be an interesting matchup when the Saints get Ingram out of the backfield, or into open space against those Tennessee linebackers, to see what kind of positioning and how Mark is able to take them on. Jeffrey Simmons, their huge defensive lineman, and one of their leading sackers. He's going to play today, but he's been banged up with a leg injury that has had him limited in practice. So that's where we're looking at, for the Tennessee Titans injuries. And as far as C.J. Gardner-Johnson, we wish him a speedy recovery. I expect he'll be back in probably 4 to 5 weeks at 100%. Fortunately, it's not a broken, or it's only a broken toe and not any structural damage or ligament damage to that foot. So that's going to get him on the field a lot faster, back on the field a lot faster. Obviously, we're going to see a lot more of P.J. Williams. I would certainly hope and expect to see a lot more of Bradley Roby. And the Saints activated Ken Crawley this week too. So they still have some decent depth in the secondary.
Well, let's go ahead and read off this injury report brought to us by our friend and colleague, John Hendricks. John reports it will be no Alvin Kamara, Andrew Duell, Jalen Holmes, Teron Armstead, Nick Vannett, and Lil Jordan Humphrey. Those are your inactives for the New Orleans Saints today. Any surprises there, Bob, outside of the injuries that we had mentioned earlier? I know Vannett had been practicing all week, and there was some optimism he might be able to come back into the lineup, but no veteran tight end, still going with Adam Troutman, who had a very disappointing week last week, and Juwan Johnson will be active this week for Saints 01. This question, yes, Johnson will be active this week.
Yeah, and I was actually very surprised that Juwan wasn't active last week. He's the best receiver the Saints have at tight end, which isn't saying much. It's been an extremely disappointing position, even more so than the wideout spot. But you would expect Johnson to get some activity in the passing game, especially with the injuries the Titans have at linebacker, like we just mentioned. But other than that, I am a little bit surprised that Nick Vannett isn't active. They're probably going to go with definitely going to go with Troutman, as you said, Juwan, and Garrett Griffin, who is just a glorified blocker. But Vannett is an experienced starter. He has not seen any game action that I'm aware of for the Saints yet this year. So maybe they're bringing him along a little bit more slowly. But this team is going to have to manufacture offense somehow for quarterback Trevor Siemian, who had some nice numbers in the second half against Atlanta last week. But the receiving core did not help him. Receivers and tight ends combined dropped 7 passes for Siemian last week, which would have prettied up his numbers quite a bit. But again, Siemian, I think, has good field vision, and he can run this offense. So it's up to the playmakers to make the plays for him, and the offensive line to keep him clean and upright.
Well, you said it best. No help last week for Siemian. At halftime, it's still a stat that blows my mind. At halftime, 5 drops, 5 offensive penalties, 5 total completions for the New Orleans Saints offense. And you were in the Superdome last week. What was the emotions and the vibe after what was a really disappointing first half to what was a really exciting fourth quarter outside of the end of the game? Could you feel the anxiety and the tension within the Superdome crowd after not so great of a showing in the first half?
Yeah, absolutely. You felt that tension and frustration during the course of the game. I think most of the Saints fan base accepts the fact that Trevor Siemian and before that Jameis Winston is not Drew Brees, and this offense, this Sean Payton offense, has more limitations than what we've ever seen during his 16-year tenure. But when the team shoots themselves in the foot, like they did on several drives, 2 drives that come to mind, they drove within long field goal range against Atlanta last week. And on one of those drives, they had 2 straight penalties. And on another drive, they had 3 out of 4 plays were penalties. False starts and offensive hold kind of thing. Very controllable type of penalties, but things that put this team behind the sticks. This is no longer the type of offense that can overcome a 1st and 20 or a 2nd and 15. This team has to win on first downs and set up manageable 2nd and 3rd downs for the offense to have any effectiveness whatsoever. And that falls on the offensive line doing their job, staying on sides, and the receivers just simply making the catches. I mean, Siemian was putting the ball on the mark. And the receivers weren't coming down with it. It's a very simple equation and a very fixable problem on the surface, but the players have to be the ones to fix it on the field.
Absolutely. And you talked about how stagnant the Saints offense and the limitations they have this year opposed to any other year that Sean Payton has been the head coach down in New Orleans. So the one constant this season and the MVP for me in the roundtable piece that we did this week, and I think it was just about the MVP for everyone, was Alvin Kamara to this point because he was single-handedly carrying the Saints offense. Without Kamara today, you kind of alluded to it, going to see a heavy dose of Taysom Hill, certainly going to see a lot of Mark Ingram. What do you expect Sean Payton to do in terms of the game planning, knowing you don't have one of, if not the most dangerous offensive weapon in the league today?
There was one thing I noticed about the Tennessee Titans defense against the LA Rams last week. And the Titans have shut down two high-profile offenses in the Rams and the Chiefs in 2 of the last 3 weeks. But what the Titans did, again, they have a lot of big physical defenders, but not a great deal of athleticism. So, sorry, I was reading a comment. So what the Titans did, they pinched their rushers and their defensive linemen inside and then stacked those linebackers behind them to give them kind of a free roam to the ball carrier because their defensive lineman was taking up the blockers. To combat that, and they made Matthew Stafford's life hell last week. They sacked him 5 times, hit him, pressured him 13 other times, and forced 2 interceptions. So for the Saints to combat that kind of approach, especially without Kamara, probably if he's not the best back in the National Football League, he's the second best. You need to get your runners on the edge. Ingram, despite being in the league, 11 years, he still has the athleticism to slash off tackle. Most of Taysom Hill's running plays are option routes off of the right side where he chooses a hole either off tackle or cut back inside against the guard. If the Titans employ that kind of approach, you're going to have running room to the edge, but your tackles, Hurst and Ramczyk, have to seal that edge, and the runner has to get there quickly. Look for the Saints to move around Trevor Siemian a little bit in the pass pocket, too. The Rams had some success in the second half when they started rolling Stafford out to his right, even little half rolls. Now, Matt Stafford is not the most athletic quarterback in the league, but that approach was still successful, and it could be successful against Siemian. You out on a half or a full roll, you have two trailing receivers to get the ball out of his hands quickly, and then you have a deep option. That gets Siemian outside of the pocket, where interior pressure isn't going to collapse in on him, and it looks to get the ball out of his hands. And also look for a lot of screens to Mark Ingram to kind of stymie that pass rush. And I would expect to see some screens to tight end Adam Troutman and also a quick hitter to Deontay Harris, too. You keep the Titans defense on the edge. The Saints, despite their the shorthanded Saints offense, they still should have the athletic advantage against Tennessee, but they have to get the open space to take advantage of it.
Well, another name to remember today is Ty Montgomery. Reports was that he was working with the running backs this week, and I feel bad for the guy. Every time that he's not a running back anymore and he goes back to receiver, somehow, some way, he finds himself back in the running back room. I want to address this one from Dolores because I think it's interesting. It's been the narrative for Lattimore throughout his career, kind of taking games off depending on who the guy is. He's got A.J. Brown today, who I think is one of the better up-and-coming receivers in the NFL. And I felt like Lattimore definitely struggled last week for New Orleans. Good report. His cast is coming off Monday, so that's going to make it a little bit easier to go up and challenge one-on-one with some guys. But how do you see Lattimore playing against a guy like Brown today? Obviously, it was going to be interesting if Julio was going to play today for Tennessee. It was going to be interesting for me to see if Lattimore was going to shadow one of the two. Obviously not the case today. We assume he's going to shadow Brown throughout the contest. Do you see this being a bounce-back week for Marshawn Lattimore, a guy that I think could receive some Defensive Player of the Year votes?
Yeah, I think the Saints have 2 potential Defensive Player of the Year candidates in Lattimore and Demario Davis. Demario being my first half MVP. But absolutely, I see Lattimore having a big bounce-back game, and he has to for this defense. With Derrick Henry out for the Titans offense, they're not going to become pass-happy by any stretch. Tennessee is still going to focus on balance. But Ryan Tannehill is one of the best deep ball throwers in the game, with his favorite receiver being A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown has the look of a perennial Pro Bowler. But like you said, he has the physical attributes and physical style that plays into Marshawn Lattimore's hands. So Lattimore needs to lock down on A.J. Brown, limit him from the Titans game plan, and let those force those lesser receivers to make plays against the New Orleans secondary. And without Julio Jones, they have 3 athletic tight ends that's going to test, Quan Alexander, Demario Davis, and Malcolm Jenkins in coverage. But their receivers, Nick Westbrook and Chester Rogers, Tannehill has confidence in them to make plays if A.J. Brown is blanketed. So that's why the key is for Lattimore to have such a great game, because when he is at his best, he can literally, as you know and as you pointed out, he can literally take the opposition's best wideout completely out of the game without much safety help over the top. That allows Dennis Allen to be much more aggressive in his coverage packages and his pass rush packages. So it allows Allen to bring an extra blitzer on Tannehill and allows them to kind of roll coverages, to prevent Tennessee from flooding, any of those other intermediate or even deep zones. The kind of thing that gave New Orleans trouble last week against Atlanta.
Well, you talk about Tannehill being one of the best deep ball throwers in the league. I mean, it's quite incredible to see the career resurgence he had leaving Miami and coming to Tennessee. Remember, just a few years ago, they were right there in the AFC title game, and who would have thought that season? What a remarkable run for the Titans. You mentioned they don't have Derrick Henry. A lot more going to be on the right arm of Tannehill. Adrian Peterson was picked up by the Titans, and honestly very surprised it took that long for Peterson to find a home, because I think he still has plenty of gas left in the tank to at least be a contributor to a team. But a lot of the keys is going to be getting Tannehill uncomfortable. He's a little bit more athletic than he gets credit for. But the New Orleans Saints, you and I have talked so much about David Onyemata returning and what that does for guys like Marcus Davenport. Passanio, who is one of probably your favorite addition of the offseason for the New Orleans Saints, and then Cameron Jordan as well. How do you see the defensive line holding up against what is a pretty good Tennessee front five?
The Titans, just like on defense, the Titans have an offensive line with great size, but they're more suited to run blocking than they are pass protection. Tannehill has been sacked 27 times, this season, which is a rather high number for a quarterback with such underrated mobility. Taylor Lewan, their best lineman, their left tackle, he will play today, but he has been banged up, with, I believe it's a knee injury. That actually made him a last-minute scratch against L.A. last week. That's going to be Davenport's side more often than not. Davenport is a physical freak, and as long as, knock on wood, he stays healthy, he's going to command a double team on that side. And with Onyemata commanding double teams inside, as long as those guys can consistently win that double team matchup, they're going to be able to crash the pocket on Tannehill, and that does allow for a guy like Cam Jordan, Passanio, even Carl Granderson to get one-on-one blocking opportunities. It's crucial that those guys win those chances when they get them, but it also leaves open lanes up for a free blitzer like DeMario, Quan, or even when they bring a safety like Alexander or PJ. So the Saints certainly need to pressure Tannehill. That's not something they were able to do against Matt Ryan last week, or through the first three quarters. They allowed Ryan to feel comfortable, get himself into a rhythm, and that's something. If they do that with Tannehill, it's going to be a long day for the Saints pass defense today.
Well, remember, Matt Ryan was named NFC Offensive Player of the Week for his performance. The second time the New Orleans Saints have given up that award to an opposing quarterback. You go all the way back to the matchup with the New York Giants. That was the last time. Daniel Jones bringing home NFC Offensive Player of the Week honors. Well, Bob, we talked about no Derrick Henry, no Julio Jones. I think those are some of the most recognizable names, if not the most recognizable names on this Tennessee offense. So with some of those bigger names out, you mentioned a few receivers. I'd mentioned Adrian Peterson coming back and joining the Titans fairly recently. Who's your player to watch on the offensive side for the Tennessee Titans today?
Jeremy McNichols, he's the backup running back. I agree with you. I think Adrian Peterson is going to get more rushing touches. And nobody other than Derrick Henry touched the ball very much as a runner, for the Titans when he was healthy. But McNichols is a proven and trusted pass catcher out of the backfield. He's a smaller guy. He doesn't have the size of, not many have the size of Derrick Henry. But he's also nowhere near the size of even Adrian Peterson or their other backup runner, Dante Freeman. We mentioned A.J. Brown is going to have to be contained. And Jeff Swaim leads a group of three tight ends that could present a danger for the New Orleans defense. But if they manage to guard them, a guy like McNichols can be a sneaky find and a sneaky fantasy pickup, by the way, out of the backfield. Fortunately, New Orleans has athleticism in their linebacking core that they should be, between Demario Quan and even Pete Werner, who I expect to get a lot of activity today. They have the athleticism to contain guys out of the backfield, but positioning and angles are always a problem when you're talking about a good receiving running back, and that's going to be a test for the New Orleans linebackers this afternoon.
Well, I'm glad you said fantasy guy, sneaky fantasy guy. I like McNichols as a flex option if you desperately need one, especially in PPR leagues. He's a good pickup this week. He's still available in plenty of leagues. So if you're looking for some really last-minute fantasy advice, you can check out my article with Saints News Network, or you could just tune in here and pick up McNichols real quick. But on the other side for New Orleans, we talked about how banged up they are offensively. I think it's really easy to point to a guy like Mark Ingram. It's really easy to point towards Taysom Hill in today's matchup. We talked about how disappointing Troutman was last week. We've talked about this receiving corps and, of course, Traquan Smith coming back to health a little bit. If you had to pick one guy of that receiving corps to step up, whether it's a tight end or whether it's a receiver, who do you see that being today?
I have a gut feeling that Marquez Callaway is going to have a big game. Listen, Deontay Harris is their most accomplished receiver. He's the best route runner out of the group. He has that deadly game-breaking speed, and he's been their most reliable option out of the wideouts. But Marquez Callaway, seems to have a nice rapport built with Trevor Siemian, just as he did with Jameis Winston before. And even though he only had 3 catches for 25 yards, and he himself, Callaway, had 2 drops last week, before that, he was starting to come on in the previous couple of weeks as being a more consistent threat out of that wideout core. Someone has to do it. Again, you don't want to rely on a guy like Deontay Harris, because the more snaps he plays, the more likely it is that he's going to get banged up, and that takes away from not only your offense, but he's also the best kick returner in the game today. I just have a feeling Marquez Callaway is going to have a solid game. For the Saints. It's not going to be a Michael Thomas type of game, but look for Callaway to pull in maybe 5 receptions, 80-something yards, and see the end zone again.
Well, I know Saints fans would certainly love to see that because I cannot speak enough, and I know you can't either, Bob, about how frustrating might not even be the word, but the decline in wide receiver quality from last year to this year, even without healthy Michael Thomas throughout last year. I think, and I talked about it on a podcast this week, my own podcast this week, was the Saints going after OBJ as aggressively as they did, having Sean Payton go and have his own pitch and whatnot. I think more than anything, it proves the one failure of the offseason for New Orleans, and that was not getting a second wideout, how desperate they are for wide receiver 2. And because of Michael Thomas's injury, it's even more so wide receiver 1 at this point. But I think the Saints did an excellent job picking up that cornerback they needed in the offseason because Adebo has played very well as a rookie. They did a really good job of going and getting Pete Werner in the second round and then being able to bring back Quan Alexander. And I don't think Werner gets enough credit for how well he's played this year as a rookie. So you knock out those 2, but you don't knock out the receiver. And I think the pursuit of some of the guys who became available at the deadline and even got cut after the deadline further shows that New Orleans is such desperate need for that. A lot right now, but it should have been addressed a while ago. So, Bob, last few minutes here. New Orleans, I think, has a tough test on their hands on the road, very banged up. Tennessee's banged up as well, though. We talked about that. How do you see this one going? And who is your impact player for New Orleans? You gave me an offensive guy to look out for, but who's that impact player?
I think defensively, Marcus Davenport, or one of those defensive linemen. But I'm kind of looking at Marcus Davenport to have a big impact and create a lot of disruption in that Tennessee backfield. It's obviously extremely important that the Saints squash that Titans running game with or without Derrick Henry. It was important, but you cannot let Ryan Tannehill establish any kind of offensive balance whatsoever because he's such a good play action quarterback. If they do that, that also means by default that you're going to be able to get pressure on the quarterback too. Make Tannehill uncomfortable. That's where a guy like Davenport, Onyemata, Cam, Passanio are going to be big keys to this game. But otherwise, listen, I think it's going to be a slugfest. These are two of the most physical teams in the National Football League. They're teams that like to take their opponent behind the woodshed and just beat the heck out of them. So these teams are going to go at each other all day long. Field position and the turnover battle are going to decide this outcome. There's no question about it. But I actually like the Saints on the road in a close game. I would be shocked if both teams got to 20 points. I think it's going to be a race to 20 in this one. But don't discount Sean Payton. He is such a master at putting together an effective offensive game plan, regardless of who's on the field. As long as New Orleans can get off to a solid start and not fall way behind like the Rams did to the Titans last week, the Saints are going to be able to match the Titans' physicality. But this is a game that's going to go down to the wire.
I'm with you, Bob. I think race to 20 is very accurate. In the NBA, they say race to 100. First team to get to 100 wins the game 80% of the time. I've said for years with the New Orleans Saints, and especially as we've seen this almost resurgence in the Saints defense over the years, that if the Saints could get to 21 points, I'd take them 81, 82% of the time, just because of how good the defense has been. I think it's going to be a very similar case in this game. So I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints 21-17, bounce back game for the Saints. They certainly need it. And, this is still a Saints team that I think's a wild card team. I don't know about going and winning the division, but I think even throughout all of the adversity that they've had, and that's a whole different topic for another day, Bob. If you gave every team in the league as much adversity as the Saints have had this year, I don't think there's a lot of teams with a winning record, let alone in a playoff spot if the season were to end today. So I like the New Orleans Saints 21-17. It's going to be physical. It's going to be what we love about football. It's going to be a defensive game, running the football, getting punched in the mouth, like you said, taking someone out back and just going to work. It's going to be one of those type of games. So I like the New Orleans Saints in this game. When it comes to my X factors on both sides, offensively, I'm going to take Taysom Hill because he's definitely been missed in the offense. But when you don't have Kamara and you're going to be relying on Mark Ingram, that change of pace type of guy is going to be really important. I think it's going to be Taysom Hill. Whether the Saints come up with something super creative like they did against Chicago last year, where you had a triple option with the fullback pitching out to Taysom Hill. It could be something like that. It could be something super simple like a quarterback power. But Hill's going to be that change of pace guy, so watch out for him. On the defensive side, I'm with you, Bob, but I'm going to go out to the opposite defensive end. I think Cameron Jordan, who has got a lot of heat from Saints fans, he started to pile up a couple sacks in a row. And you know what they say, when it rains, it pours. He's got sacks, I believe, in back-to-back games now. So I'm looking for the double, maybe the triple. Maybe he gets 2, maybe he gets 3 today, but it's going to be really important for the Saints to get pressure on Tannehill. And I'm looking to that defensive leader in Cam Jordan to do so. Well, Bob, where can everyone follow you on the World Wide Web? Before we go.
Folks, thank you again for tuning in to Brendan and mine's pregame show. Make sure you join us at halftime too, for a first half recap. But you can follow me individually over on Facebook, Bob Rose, or over on Twitter at BobbyR2613. Obviously, all of our work can be found, not only on my personal page, but also the Saints News Network at Saints News on Twitter. I forget the .net one. I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, sure. So you can follow us all with the Saints News Network, si.com/NFL/Saints, saints.media, or getsaintsnews.com. So we have plenty of different ways. It confuses me too, Bob. There's a lot of ways to go find us. You can follow me on the World Wide Web over at BT Boylan. That's Twitter and Instagram. As Bob said, follow us, hang out with us at halftime. We love hanging out with you guys, especially the guys that come back week in and week out. Scoob, Dolores, you guys are the best. We love seeing you week in and week out. We can't wait to see you guys over at halftime. Saints Titans kicks off at 1:00. And hopefully New Orleans gives us a little bit better of a halftime show than last week. Bob, you weren't here. That was tough, my guy. That was a tough one to do alone, especially when there wasn't a whole lot of positives to talk about. But
Sorry,
nonetheless,
man. I mean, I did think about logging on with you, from our field level view seats. But I try to avoid too many f bombs, when I come on air, and I was dropping a whole lot of them in the first 3 quarters.
I haven't seen Angry Bob in a long time. That would have been fun. That would have been fun. But we'll see you guys at halftime. Hopefully not an Angry Bob, more like a Happy Bob at halftime. We'll see you guys then. Enjoy the first half.